Obviously, everything is graded along the way. I get that, but in the grand scheme of things, what matters from the last 4 days compared to what's coming ahead with the pads on and quote unquote real football here?
Yeah, I think everything matters. Every time you go out there, you've got a purpose and intent, and that's the only way you can improve. So everything up to this point matters, and you're constantly evaluating. And certainly, if you see great improvement in certain individuals, you're not going to hold what they did against them early on in camp. So, but for these guys, every rep, every drill, everything we do out there matters.
Speaking of making plays and making it matter, Vernon had a big play yesterday. There seems to be a couple spots like the third, fourth, fifth safeties, and you mentioned the outside linebackers the other day. When do those things start to become a little bit more clear to you guys?
Yeah, I think we have to get into some of those preseason games and really give it a chance to kind of like sort itself out. And I think a lot of times you see guys just start to separate themselves from the group.
Have you talked to Aaron about preseason playing time yet?
I have not.
And in general, with the way last season started against the Saints, does that in any way influence how you attack the preseason and use some of your more impactful players?
Yeah, potentially. I think you got to learn from every situation you've been in, and at least it stimulates conversation.
Matt, you talked about how you've been kind of easing Sammy back into team drills and whatnot. So what did you see from him yesterday, and what do you need to see from him in order to get him to be kind of fully with every single rep for team drills?
Yeah, it's just a progression. We're going to be smart with him and limit his reps until we feel like he's on the other side of whatever he had. So I think each and every day you'll see an increased workload, provided he's feeling good, and because it does us no good if he's not available for us.
How hard is it as a coach to be patient and play that long game, knowing that it's camp now, it's 17-game season, and what matters comes in January, making sure the guys are healthy and ready for that as opposed to healthy and ready for next week's practice?
Yeah, that's always a balancing act because you want to get everybody out there competing, and it makes you better when you have your best players out there, and no matter who they're going up against. But certainly when you have good on good, it definitely increases the competition level, the intensity level, and that's, I think, you see our guys improve in that regard. But also knowing that this is a marathon. I mean, it is a long year, and we never want to put anybody at risk.
You're getting to be about a week into camp now. Is Christian getting close to returning at all, or is that just not on the radar yet?
Yeah, I don't have any updates on him as of now.
Is that getting concerning as we get deeper?
No, he's getting better. He's definitely getting better. He's improving, and but as far as to give you a timeline when he's going to be back, I can't do that.
Tipa played a lot for you last year.
No more expectations.
No limitations.
Exactly.
Tipa played a lot for you last year during the second half of the season. From what I've seen, looks like he's been pretty active so far in camp. What have you thought?
Yeah, he's done a nice job, and certainly there's a lot to work on there. One thing, just making sure that when we are in the run game, him setting the edge, and obviously with all those guys that aren't our starters, their presence on we fence is going to be absolutely critical to our football team, and how they can contribute in that area is going to have a big effect on whether or not they're on our roster.
What were your takeaways from the extended special teams stuff you guys did yesterday? Did you like what you saw?
Yeah, I thought there were some guys competing, and the guys that didn't give the effort that we're looking for were singled out, and it's hard to deny what you see on tape. And I did like the effort. I thought it was pretty good. I'm sure that was more than what you guys have seen in a while in terms of just the competitiveness of that period and doing the full covers, and a lot of that is just, I would say, from the past, that's on me. Just not knowing trying to balance the amount of energy you expend in that period, and with what you're doing offensively and defensively. But certainly that's a huge part of the game, and we're going to emphasize that. And Rich has done a great job of kind of educating me along the way.
Matt, what do you think of the job Gabe's done for you kicking, in that solo so far?
Yeah, I think he's improving. He's got a big leg, and I just think he's shown improvement every day.
Matt, we've seen a bunch of different guys take turns, with the return spots on special teams. Do you see narrowing that down before the preseason games, or are you going to go into the preseason games and just kind of try everybody?
Well, I think you're always training multiple people because there's a lot of unknowns in our game. So you better have somebody that's been getting some reps so that in case they have to go, they're ready to go. And so we're always constantly going to trade multiple guys in that regard. But yes, to answer your question, when we get closer to the preseason games, we'll narrow it down for sure in terms of who's going to get those live reps in those preseason games.
And how do you address drops? You had a few yesterday in practice. Is there something that or do you just go back to work the next day?
Yeah, I think you got to have a short memory. And if there's something from a technique standpoint, I think you absolutely address it. Like if somebody's allowing the ball to cross their eyes and they're not reaching out in front and being aggressive with their hands, then you absolutely do address that. But if it's just one of those deals where it hits a guy's hands and he drops the ball, let's play the next play. Let's not dwell on that. Let's try to just move past it and just move on to the next play.
You pulled Amari aside during Indy yesterday. What were you going over with him, and what sort of jump do you want to see from him this game?
Yeah, I think Amari had a really good day yesterday. Just not only what he's shown on defense, but also on offense as well, and just some of the effort that he displayed out there. It was pretty gritty, which is something we want from the entire receiving room. I think a lot of times the receivers kind of help establish your identity as an offense and just how tenacious they are in both the run game and in the pass game.
When you get these young defensive linemen, like Wyatt and Slayton and Heflin, and you get them into camp, what don't they know that in college, they were pretty dominant or they had made a lot of plays, but when they get here, it seems to be really different for them. What is it that they don't realize or don't know that affects their success?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, when they're in college, they're the best player on the field. So maybe the technique's not quite as important. When you get to this level, and it definitely is a much more balanced playing field. So I think there's just a learning curve to that position. And I think you see it quite frequently around the league. Guys learning how to, a lot of times you look at it from a pass rush standpoint, but there's got to be ways that you set up your moves and just the technique that you have to use every snap. So I would say typically those guys, there is a little bit more of a learning curve there.
Matt, how would you grade and characterize the competitiveness of camp so far this year compared to your first 3 seasons?
That's always a tough question because unless I journaled it and go back and look at notes, it's just hard to compare that. I think it's just more of a feel thing in the moment of where you are, and but I don't even want to go back and think about last year. I'm totally focused on right now and just doing the things that we need to do to get better. And certainly, you guys are out there. There's a lot of areas that we can improve upon in all 3 phases. And one thing that I would like to see from our team is just a little bit more urgency. Things that you can control, right? The effort that you display, but just simple things, whether it's running on and off the field or in and out of the huddle, just attack it with a little bit more urgency.
I think there's a natural tendency to cut it loose or want to cut it loose when pads are on. Do you have to work to manage that level of intensity while also finding times to let players cut it loose?
Well, I always want them to cut it loose, but are you talking about going full board and destroying their teammates? Yeah, no, we always emphasize team first, trying to stay up. It's a thud period. Everything's thud. Unless we're going to the ground, everything's thud. We talk about just being a great teammate, no cheap shots, no side shots, You never want to put your teammate in a guy that's in a defenseless position at jeopardy, because it not only puts him at jeopardy, it typically will put somebody else. Like if a guy's not looking and he gets launched into somebody's legs, that it can have a compound effect. So that's something that we constantly show to our team when we're doing it right, when we're not doing it right. And I think that's just part of the process that you go through and learning how to be a pro and learning how to practice.
Have you been with other teams in the past that have gone too much, that maybe that's kind of the way you do it now, you learned from the past, just this is how we need to do it, keep everybody up, to keep the thumping to a minimum?
Well, it's not necessarily keeping the thumping to a minimum, because we actually call it a thud period. So if you're squared up on somebody that's carrying the ball, we want them to thud up. But we just don't want guys going to the ground, because typically, and you saw it yesterday, we had a guy go to the ground and he gets injured. So you want guys to stay up. We want guys to be available, and we'll get a lot of that tackling and hitting done within the preseason games and in practice, doing all the tackling drills that you'll see. Like, we have a team tackling circuit today. So that's typically what we want to do. Now, not to say that we haven't gone to the ground in camp. We've done that before. We did it last year. I think last year at family night, if I recall correctly. And then the previous year, when there were no preseason games, we did a lot of that with our younger players. But it's kind of a feel thing. We'll see where we're at, whether or not we need to go to the ground. But right now, the emphasis is staying on our feet.
Will anything live or going to the ground be in the plans for Friday night?
Potentially. Just not quite there yet. And we'll see how we're feeling and how we get through these next couple days. But yeah, potentially it could happen. We'll just see.
You want to continue doing the stuff after practice with the younger guys? Do you still have, 15 plays planned every practice, or is that just occasionally?
Yeah, I think it's more occasionally. But yes, to answer your question, we have a period for that planned today. A lot of it's going to be dependent upon how long we go in our other periods. And I think you see it sometimes in some of those move the ball periods. Our tempo kind of has gotten a little bit slower, and haven't gotten the number of reps, so that condenses your window to be able to do that, especially when there's a time constraint on your practice. Like, we have a time constraint today of 2 hours, so we have to be off the field. And but provided we get through everything in a timely fashion and what we have scripted, then there certainly will be a developmental period at the end. Just it's so beneficial for all those guys, and it's beneficial for us as coaches, for our personnel people, to get a good evaluation on these guys.